The town of Crestwood had always prided itself on its serenity. Streets were lined with neatly trimmed lawns, neighbors waved to each other without hesitation, and the occasional siren of a police car seemed more like background noise than a warning. But that calm was shattered one crisp autumn morning when Leila Thompson, a 28-year-old local woman, failed to show up for work at the community library. At first, people shrugged it off. Leila was known for her occasional tardiness, and perhaps she had gotten held up. But when she didn't answer her phone, and no one had seen her all morning, unease crept through the town like a slow fog. By midday, the police were called. Detective Maya Sanders, new to Crestwood, arrived at the Thompson residence. Leila's mother, Eleanor, sat frozen in the living room, clutching her rosary and staring blankly at the empty doorway. "I just don't understand," Eleanor whispered. "She never misses work, never, and she wouldn't just leave without telling someone." Maya nodded gently, taking notes. "We'll find her, ma'am. Can you tell me about anyone she might have been in contact with recently?" Eleanor hesitated. "There's Daniel Reeves. He's a coworker, very kind. They've worked together for years." Daniel Reeves. The name meant nothing initially, but as the police called him in for questioning, it became clear that he was the kind of man everyone would trust without a second thought. He was tall, well-groomed, and disarmingly polite. His calm demeanor filled the room as he answered questions with precision, offering alibis and even volunteering to help organize search parties. "He's perfect," Maya thought, noting how naturally he seemed to position himself as an ally rather than a suspect. But something about him felt off. A slight hesitation here, a flicker of tension there, tiny cracks in a smooth exterior. The first few hours of the investigation were slow. Daniel's story was flawless. He claimed to have left work early the day Leila disappeared to meet a client, then spent the evening at home alone. He had receipts to corroborate parts of his story, and neighbors vouched for his presence in the area. Everything seemed airtight. And yet, Detective Sanders couldn't shake the unease. She pulled up the town's CCTV footage and watched frames over and over. Around 10:45 p.m., she saw Daniel walking briskly down a street near Leila's apartment complex. He looked ordinary, almost mundane, but he was in a place he claimed he had never been. A chill ran down Maya's spine. "Maybe he's innocent," she muttered to herself, though doubt lingered. "Maybe I'm just imagining it." Meanwhile, Daniel attended the small gathering at Leila's favorite cafe, comforting her friends and colleagues. He smiled gently, offered a hand to Eleanor, and spoke softly about how worried he was. No one suspected that beneath that polite exterior, he was carefully studying everyone in the room, gauging their reactions, measuring how much they knew. His innocence was a performance, and he was excellent at it. Yet not everything went according to his careful plan. A neighbor, Mrs. Whitaker, mentioned seeing Daniel outside Leila's apartment the night she disappeared. She thought he was just walking his dog, she said, frowning, but he lingered, like he was waiting for something or someone. Maya noted the discrepancy. Daniel's timeline didn't include a late-night walk anywhere near Leila's place. She filed the observation away, thinking it was minor, but it planted a seed of doubt. As the day wore on, the town grew anxious. Flyers were posted, neighbors whispered in groups, and social media buzzed with speculation. Every person Daniel encountered seemed to trust him implicitly. He moved among them like a shadow, unthreatening, blending into the community he had known for years. But Maya noticed that his eyes rarely met hers directly. There was something calculating behind that polite gaze, something that hinted he knew more than he let on. By evening, the police organized a search of the nearby woods and abandoned buildings. Daniel volunteered immediately, suggesting strategies and pointing out areas that could be overlooked. His knowledge of the town's geography was extensive, detailed, and, as Maya realized, oddly precise. "This is too convenient," she whispered to herself, watching him outline the search zones on the map. "No one knows this town like he does, unless they've spent a lot of time planning for it." But every time Maya tried to push further, Daniel deflected smoothly, offering alternative theories and even expressing concern for her career. "Detective, I hope we're not jumping to conclusions here. Panic can ruin good judgment." His voice was calm, measured, convincing. As night fell, the search teams returned with no leads. Leela was still missing. Daniel drove home alone, and the camera on the police car recorded every detail, capturing the perfect image of a man who looked utterly innocent. He smiled to passers-by, waved to children, and nodded to neighbors who stopped to ask if he had seen Leela. He was a man who belonged in the town, a man who could never do anything wrong. At least, that's what everyone wanted to believe. And yet, as he unlocked his apartment door, he paused for a long moment. No one saw the subtle smirk that crossed his face, the small flicker of satisfaction. Inside, he closed the door and checked a hidden drawer, carefully counting items only he would know mattered: plans, notes, secrets, things no one else could see. The calm facade had held for hours, fooling everyone, even the police. But as Maya Sanders reviewed the evidence one more time, she sensed that beneath that composed exterior, something dangerous was waiting to be revealed. Daniel Reeves was not what he seemed. And the first part of this story, his perfect innocent act, was only just beginning to crack. Detective Maya Sanders couldn't shake the image from her mind, the photograph found in the mysterious package. Daniel Reeves and Leela Thompson captured in a dimly lit alley, their expressions frozen in time. Daniel's face was calm, almost casual, while Leela's eyes betrayed fear, or was it surprise? The photo raised more questions than it answered, but it confirmed Maya's deepest suspicion: Daniel's innocence was a facade. The next morning, Maya returned to the station before anyone else arrived. She spread the photo across her desk, comparing it to the timeline Daniel had provided. Something didn't align. He had claimed to be at home that night, yet here he was, on camera near Leela. She pulled up the footage from nearby security cameras and noticed small but telling details: Daniel's stride, his glances over his shoulder, his deliberate, measured movements. This wasn't a man caught by chance, it was someone acting, someone careful. Meanwhile, Daniel continued his performance. He attended a town meeting that morning, offering to organize community efforts to find Leela. He smiled, shook hands, reassured neighbors. He was the man everyone wanted to trust. Yet Maya observed him from the back of the room, noting his subtle cues: clenched jaw, eyes scanning the crowd, fingers tapping lightly as if counting something. Every gesture screamed control, calculation, precision. Maya decided to dig deeper. She started by investigating Daniel's past. Superficially, his life was clean: a respectable career, no criminal record, a stable address. But under the surface, she discovered anomalies. There were gaps in his employment history, periods unaccounted for, brief addresses in other states that disappeared from records. A background check turned up a name change 5 years prior. Daniel Reeves wasn't his original name. This revelation sent a chill through Maya. She remembered the old police report she had stumbled upon months earlier, an unsolved disappearance in a neighboring town involving a man matching Daniel's previous identity. The case had gone cold, dismissed for lack of evidence. She realized with mounting dread that Daniel might have been repeating a calculated pattern of behavior across multiple towns. Maya's instincts were screaming at her, but she needed proof. She requested access to Daniel's apartment under the guise of routine investigation. When officers arrived, Daniel greeted them with that same composed smile, offering to assist in any way possible. Maya noted the uncanny calmness in his voice, the rehearsed politeness that made him almost inhuman. The apartment seemed normal at first glance, tidy, organized, almost sterile. But Maya noticed subtle oddities, walls slightly scuffed in places, a locked cabinet behind the bookshelf, a small camera hidden in a smoke detector. Every detail screamed secrecy. With a warrant in hand, they opened the locked cabinet. Inside, they found photographs, notes, and maps. Some images showed Leela in various locations, taken without her knowledge. Other photographs were older, featuring different women, some of whom had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Maya felt a knot in her stomach. The calm, polite Daniel Reeves was not just hiding something. He had constructed an elaborate web of secrets spanning years. She realized the photograph in the package was not an anomaly. It was a clue deliberately left for someone to find, a calculated move to manipulate perception. As the investigation intensified, Daniel's behavior began to shift, ever so subtly. At first, it was minor, a flicker of impatience, a hesitation before answering questions. Then came the mistakes. He left his phone unattended at the cafe, where Maya managed to glimpse a message he had sent, hinting at knowledge no innocent person should have. He started arriving late to meetings, claiming minor inconveniences, yet his excuses seemed increasingly thin. The town, meanwhile, began to murmur. Neighbors who once praised Daniel's kindness started noticing odd behavior. He lingered too long in empty streets, smiled at times that felt inappropriate, and maintained a presence that unsettled even those who liked him. The facade that had shielded him was cracking. Maya decided to confront Daniel indirectly. She scheduled a meeting under the guise of routine updates on the investigation. Daniel arrived, impeccably dressed, his polite demeanor unwavering. But Maya noticed the small things, the slight twitch of his fingers, the way his eyes darted toward the window as if expecting someone, something. Daniel, we have some questions about your movements last week, specifically the night Leela disappeared. Care to walk me through your timeline? He smiled, serene, calm. Detective, I've already told you everything. I was at home. I even have receipts and a neighbor to confirm it. Maya pressed further. And yet there's footage placing you near Leela's apartment. Care to explain that? For the first time, Daniel's calm faltered, not dramatically, but enough for Maya to notice. He shifted uncomfortably, glanced briefly at the floor, then quickly recovered. I can explain that. I might have walked by, but it's nothing, just coincidence. The subtle hesitation told Maya all she needed to know. Daniel was lying, but he was careful. He didn't panic, didn't over-explain, and didn't incriminate himself outright. He was calculating his words, controlling the narrative, and testing how much she knew. Maya decided she needed allies. She contacted officers in neighboring towns, uncovering old cases with eerily similar patterns, women disappearing, men matching Daniel's former identity in the vicinity, and cases that were quietly closed with little resolution. The puzzle was larger than Crestwood. It was a trail of deception spanning years. That evening, Daniel returned home alone. He checked his security system, noting the police vehicles parked near his building, and reviewed his own surveillance footage. Each move was deliberate, each interaction calculated. He was aware that someone was beginning to see through the mask, but he was always one step ahead. As night fell, Maya walked the streets near Leela's apartment alone, retracing the steps shown in the mysterious photograph. Every shadow seemed to watch her, every sound magnified. The sense of danger was palpable. She realized that Daniel's control over the town was more than psychological, it was tactical. He had manipulated perception, orchestrated interactions, and maintained a perfect facade. But no mask lasts forever. The night air over Crestwood had a strange stillness, almost as if the town itself was holding its breath. Detective Maya Sanders drove slowly along the edge of the industrial district, following the tip that had come in hours earlier. Reports placed Daniel Reeves near an abandoned warehouse at the far end of town, carrying a large, unidentifiable object. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she parked her car behind a rusted dumpster, careful to remain unseen. The warehouse was a hulking structure, dark and silent except for the faint hum of an old street lamp. Its broken windows reflected the dim glow of the city, and the air smelled faintly of rust, dust, and decay. Every instinct in Maya screamed caution. Daniel was unpredictable, meticulous, and dangerous. She crouched behind her car and raised binoculars. In the faint light, she could see a tall figure moving inside the warehouse. Daniel. He was alone. At first glance, he appeared calm, almost meditative, carrying a large wrapped bundle into the building. Maya noted how deliberate his movements were, careful, precise, measured. This was not a man caught in panic or desperation. This was someone in control, someone who had rehearsed every move long before tonight. Inside the warehouse, the bundle was placed on a long, dusty table. Maya couldn't see its contents yet, but she noticed small details, photographs taped to the walls, maps with pins and strings connecting towns, a whiteboard filled with names and dates, evidence of a mind obsessively tracking his past actions. Maya reached for her radio, whispering to her team to maintain a perimeter. As she adjusted her focus, she caught movement in the shadows. Daniel turned suddenly, his head tilting as if sensing her presence. For a split second, his eyes met hers, and a flicker of recognition, an almost imperceptible smile crossed his face. He knew she was watching. He always knew. She had underestimated him before, she realized. Daniel wasn't just hiding, he was orchestrating, controlling, anticipating. The calm, polite man the town believed in was nothing more than a mask, and now the mask was slipping. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by a sound, a metallic scrape. Daniel had opened the bundle. What she saw made her stomach twist. Inside were items belonging to Leela, a scarf she often wore, her journal, and a small necklace engraved with her initials. The evidence was undeniable. Daniel had her, or had had her. The sense of horror was immediate, visceral. Suddenly, Daniel stepped back, scanning the warehouse as if he were aware of the perimeter. He didn't panic, but his movements became faster, more deliberate. Maya realized he was aware of her surveillance. He had anticipated it. Back at the station, Maya and her team cross-referenced everything Daniel had done, previous addresses, gaps in employment, movements leading up to Leela's disappearance. The pattern was staggering. Daniel wasn't just a local man, he was a serial manipulator. His actions were calculated over years, possibly decades. Each disappearance, each carefully orchestrated alibi fit into a chilling puzzle. Meanwhile, Daniel left the warehouse as quietly as he had entered. Maya's team tracked him through the streets using GPS from a vehicle he had rented earlier. Every turn, every stop seemed meaningless at first, but patterns emerged. He had visited multiple locations across town, seemingly ordinary places, yet each linked subtly to past victims. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that he was toying with them. Every action, every seemingly random stop was a message. He was showing them, in his own twisted way, that he was always one step ahead. That evening, Maya returned to the police station to review the photographs found in the warehouse. They were disturbing. Images of women in everyday situations, moments captured without their knowledge. Some had disappeared years ago, and the faces of the victims stared back at her, accusing and haunting. She realized Daniel's obsession wasn't just with control, it was with documentation, with leaving a trace only he could manipulate. The town of Crestwood was starting to notice changes in Daniel's behavior. Neighbors reported seeing him in unusual locations, speaking to strangers at odd hours, sometimes leaving gifts or notes in places where they would be discovered. Each act seemed harmless, almost friendly, but the undercurrent of menace was unmistakable. The man everyone thought they knew was now a source of fear. Detective Sanders convened her team. "We know he's been planning this for years," she said, her voice tight with urgency. Every detail, every move, every disappearance, it's all connected. He's methodical, precise, and dangerous. We need to find Leela, and fast. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One of the junior detectives noticed a small detail in the photographs from the warehouse, a corner of a distinctive patterned tile, the kind used only in a specific storage facility on the outskirts of town. Cross-referencing this with surveillance footage, they confirmed Daniel had visited that facility multiple times in the past week. Maya didn't hesitate. She gathered a team and moved to secure the storage facility. Daniel's vehicle was parked outside, but he was nowhere to be seen. Inside, the air was thick with dust and mildew. Boxes lined the walls, and in the center of the room, a single metal locker stood, locked but not bolted down. When the lock was forced open, the contents revealed the chilling extent of Daniel's obsession. Personal items belonging to multiple women, including Leela, were neatly organized. Journals, letters, clothing, each item cataloged and carefully preserved. Maya's stomach churned. This was no ordinary criminal. This was a man who had meticulously documented his crimes, keeping trophies as reminders of his control. At that moment, a sound echoed from the back of the facility, a faint shuffling noise. Maya signaled for backup, her hand resting on her weapon. Slowly, she moved toward the noise, her heart pounding. And then she saw him, Daniel Reeves, calm, composed, almost eerily serene, standing in the shadows. "Detective Sanders," he said softly, his voice even, almost friendly. "I wondered when you would figure it out." Maya's mind raced. This was the man the town trusted, the man everyone thought was harmless, and yet, standing before her, he radiated a dangerous, calculated energy that made the hair on her arm stand up. Daniel didn't resist as officers moved to surround him, but there was no panic in his eyes, only a quiet amusement, a sense of superiority. "You think you've uncovered everything," he said, "but you've barely scratched the surface." The storage facility felt cold, sterile, and suffocating. Detective Maya Sanders stood with her team, weapons drawn, eyes locked on Daniel Reeves, who remained unnervingly calm in the center of the room. The evidence in front of them was overwhelming. Lila's belongings, journals cataloging his past victims, photographs of women spanning years, each meticulously labeled and preserved. Yet Daniel's composure suggested he was still in control, still holding secrets they hadn't uncovered. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," Daniel said softly, his voice almost conversational. "You think this ends with Lila, or with me in custody. You've barely scratched the surface." Maya felt a shiver run down her spine. His words were not a threat, they were a statement of fact. He had planned for this moment. Every move the police made, every investigation, every piece of evidence left for them to find, it had been anticipated. "Daniel," Maya said firmly, "we know everything. We know about Lila. We know about the other women. You're coming with us. This ends now." He tilted his head slightly, a small, eerie smile playing on his lips. "Do you really think it ends that easily?" At that moment, a call came over the radio. A young woman, terrified and shaking, had come forward at the local diner. She claimed she had seen Daniel with another victim, someone alive, hidden in plain sight in a location no one had checked yet. Maya's heart skipped. Lila could still be alive. Time was running out. The team split, following the tip to an abandoned townhouse on the outskirts of town. Daniel, surprisingly, offered to go with them voluntarily, claiming he could lead them to the location. Maya hesitated. This was exactly the kind of manipulation she had feared, but there was no other way to reach the potential victim in time. Inside the townhouse, the air was thick with dust and stale odors. The floorboards creaked under their weight. Daniel moved ahead calmly, hands raised slightly, as if to show he was harmless, yet every step was deliberate, measured, controlled.
Maya kept her weapon trained on him, watching for any sign of deception. At the end of a long hallway, Daniel stopped. He gestured toward a locked bedroom door. "She's in there," he said, his tone neutral. "But if you think this is simple, it isn't. There's more than you realize." With a key retrieved from his pocket, another trick Maya had expected, Daniel opened the door. Inside was Lila, alive but frightened, bound but unharmed. Relief flooded Maya, but it was short-lived. The room contained more than just Lila. Behind her, another hidden compartment revealed the possessions of other victims, evidence Daniel had been keeping his trophies, cataloging his crimes meticulously. "You've been playing a game for years," Maya said coldly, "manipulating everyone, hiding in plain sight. But it's over. It ends now." Daniel's calm facade began to falter, though only slightly. His hands twitched, his eyes darting toward escape routes. "You don't understand. You'll never know everything. There are parts of me, parts of what I've done, that even you can't comprehend." But Maya didn't flinch. She signaled her team, and Daniel was finally restrained, his movements restricted, his manipulative control slipping away. The man who had once appeared perfectly innocent was now exposed as a calculating predator, his carefully constructed mask shattered. The police began to process the evidence in the townhouse. Lila was checked by paramedics, given blankets and water, and immediately started recounting what had happened. Her testimony confirmed the chilling reality. Daniel had stalked her for weeks, observed her routines, and created an elaborate system to control and intimidate her without ever revealing his intentions until the moment he had her in a controlled environment. As more victims came forward, the full scope of Daniel's actions became apparent. The media descended on Crestwood, reporting on the shocking revelations. Friends, neighbors, and coworkers expressed disbelief. "He seemed so ordinary," one neighbor said, "so polite, so calm. We never would have suspected." And that was precisely Daniel's power, the ability to appear harmless while orchestrating terror behind the scenes. His calm, polite exterior had been his greatest weapon. In the weeks that followed, Daniel was formally charged with multiple crimes: abduction, assault, unlawful restraint, and a string of related offenses spanning years. The trial became a national sensation, with evidence from his meticulously kept records presented in court. Photographs, notes, and journals painted the picture of a man who was methodical, obsessive, and deeply calculating. During testimony, Maya watched as Daniel maintained a composed exterior. Occasionally, a flicker of arrogance appeared, a reminder that even behind bars, he believed he had outsmarted the world in some way. But the evidence was undeniable. Every victim, every act, every deception was documented, leaving no room for doubt. The town of Crestwood slowly began to recover, but the scars ran deep. Trust had been broken, shaken to its core. Friends who had believed in Daniel's innocence felt betrayed, and neighbors who had smiled at him in passing now recalled moments that, in retrospect, seemed ominous. The realization that the man they had trusted for years was capable of such manipulation left an indelible mark. Maya, however, felt a sense of closure. Lila was safe, and justice was being served. But she also understood the lesson Daniel's case imparted. Appearances could deceive, and evil often hides behind the most benign masks. The calm, polite exterior that Daniel had maintained for so long had allowed him to manipulate and terrorize without detection, a chilling reminder that danger often lurks where it is least expected. As the sun set over Crestwood, Maya reflected on the case. Daniel Reeves was no longer free, no longer controlling, no longer pretending. Yet the memory of his deception would linger in the town, a cautionary tale about trust, perception, and the hidden darkness that sometimes walks among us, disguised as innocence.